Hi, everybody, and welcome to our demo. This is Sarah Sedwick coming to you live with David Shevlino. We're each in our home studios. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and David, you're in.
I'm in North Carolina, in near Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay, and we are both at home, but we are getting together online today to do a little painting and talk about our upcoming workshop in France, which is happening in October 2024. And we're both really excited about it. So we're going to paint and we're going to chat about our workshop a little bit. And you can find a link and more details about that workshop down below the video on YouTube. You just click on more or see more or whatever it says down there under the video. All the information you need will be there. So let's paint.
All right. So we're going to be having simultaneous still lifes going on here.
Yes. Simultaneous still life. I tried to talk David into painting the same still life as me, but neither one of us are really big fans of painting from photos, especially still life from photo, which is kind of like the most sort of boring thing to paint, just still life from a photo. So neither one of us wanted to do that. So we both have live setups.
I agree with you about that. Of all the things to paint from photos, a still life is probably one of the more boring subjects.
For sure. Yes, it's already still enough in real life. There's those subjects like the child portrait, the animal portrait, the building you might not want to stand out in front of for 3 hours to capture it. That maybe we need to work from photos when we're doing those kinds of things, but still life, not so much. Okay. So what are you painting there? You have a little
Well,
flower in a vase?
I have some. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but they're fake flowers. But I'm
Ooh.
going to make them look as real as I can. And I'm
Mhm.
all my canvas is toned. It's pre-toned. It's toned gray. And I before I started painting, I also put a light coat of oil, just some thinned safflower oil, just to make the surface a little more slick, which I like. And
Yeah,
so,
I started on a white canvas. I'm using a canvas panel. It's a Raymar cotton canvas panel, primed. I didn't do anything to it before I started painting except give it a bath with some Gamsol and some pigment mixed in. And it's my pigment that I mix in is a combination of red, yellow, and blue. It's the two cads and some ultramarine blue to kind of neutralize the situation. And that's what I use to give a tonal wash on my canvas, wet tone, before I start painting on it.
and what kind of medium are you using?
Well,
The-
Gamsol is my
Oh,
solvent,
the gam. Oh, right, right.
and I'm also using some walnut alkyd medium from Mgram.
Okay. Okay. I'm I'm using Galkid, which is pretty similar to the M-gram.
Mhm. Yeah, Galkid is okay. I like the gel in a medium. I like to use Gamblin solvent-free gel. I have a little bit of that on my palette too. It's right down
Hmm.
here in the corner, this goopy clear stuff, and I'll probably be dipping into that. I'm really addicted to that stuff. But yeah, like the convenience of a medium that's also a gel, especially for travel and workshops.
Yeah, I have the actually, let me correct myself. It's not literally it's Gamblin solvent-free medium. It's basically Galkid, but it's a liquid and it doesn't have a solvent in it. But I also like using the gel as well.
Mhm. So we'll have to compromise when we come up with our materials list for the workshop as far as what we
Oh,
recommend people bring with them.
I'm sure we can figure.
Absolutely. I think solvent-free gel for travel is definitely the way to go. That's what I'll be using at the workshop.
That's Yeah, that's fine with me.
But whatever people want to use. And that's what I love about the materials list that you and I are coming up with for our workshop is that we do have recommendations that we're offering to the students for what they can bring, but we definitely also want people painting with whatever they're comfortable with. So everything from the kind of brushes that you use to the pigments that you'll choose is very flexible. And that's a good thing.
Flexibility is good.
Yeah, we don't want people to have to go out and buy a whole new set of art supplies just to come paint with us.
No,
Some, wo-
no. I'm
some
not that big
workshops.
of I'm not that big of a stickler on having the exact colors. So long as students are comfortable with certain basic colors, or if they have their own preference about some colors, I think that's fine.
hmm And we don't have a huge, neither one of us paints with a huge palette of colors. So it'll probably end up being about, I'm guessing, 12 recommended colors plus white on the materials list when it's all said and done.
Probably. Yeah, I only have about a dozen colors on my palette as well.
Yeah. And I really try to stick to the split primary. Love my cadmiums, but there's great cadmium substitutes for people who don't like to use them. And I don't usually paint with tube green, but I'm looking forward to trying your favorite, which is,
Oh,
what did you say? Azo green?
yeah, the azo green. That's an M-gram color that I've liked using. It's kind of, I think of it as an olive green.
You and I are both lovers of the M gram, lovers of everything M gram. Cannot go wrong.
Yes, yes. Kudos to M. Graham.
And I use some Gamblin paint too. They're both Oregon companies,
That's right. They are.
and I've never been to
Gamblin,
either of their factories.
yeah, Gamblin's great stuff. I used
Mhm.
it for a number of years.
Yeah, I like the consistency less. I like soft paint. I really, it's like the reason that I like to paint on cotton canvas and not linen, and the reason that I like to paint with softer paint rather than pastier paint is really just because I feel like it suits my alla prima goals a little bit better.
The nice thing
Have
that I find with the M. Graham is that I seem to be using less medium because it has a natural creamy consistency
mm,
because they use walnut oil. So I find
yeah.
myself using less medium.
And so you're just kind of launching in with a really rough drawing and then going right into
Yeah,
big patches of color.
right.
Love
I'm
that.
blocking
And
in lights first.
I am doing a little tonal underpainting. I'm going to pull out some lights. I'm going to show myself my darks and not do like a totally tight drawing, but really give myself a good idea of where I'm going with it. I like to say that an underpainting only needs to be as detailed as it needs to be for you to feel comfortable when you start in on the color. And I love painting wet on wet. So wet right onto a wet underpainting. I'm not waiting for it to dry. I'm not doing an underpainting in acrylic, although I think that's a really good option for oil painters who like to paint on a dry surface. And we're going to try, I think we're going to try probably both things in our workshop, having students tone their canvas with some gray and try that because I do think that's a lovely option. And then, you know, work on a white canvas and tone it with some color. I can pull out some lights now.
But what I love about alla prima painting is how it's very forgiving. Um, I love being able to move everything around right as it's happening.
hmm Yes. And you paint
Although
with
that,
pretty. Hmm?
oh, I was going to say, so, though that can sometimes drive some people crazy, the fact that everything's moving around. It's a double-edged
Well,
sword.
then, yeah, then the scraping can really come in and be our friend. Do you do a lot of scraping as part of your process as you're painting?
Sometimes, not as much with alla prima painting, usually with more indirect painting where it's getting built up in layers, drying and then more paint on top of that. But with alla prima, I tend to just bang it all in.
So our workshop in France is going to be 9 days, and it's going to include all kinds of fun elements. We're going to have rigorous studio time, and we're going to have also field trips, and it sounds like wine tasting excursions and all kinds of adventures, maybe a little painting on location. We're going to have some
Yes,
models.
right. We should get a nice, there should be a nice mix of painting experience or subject matter.
Yeah. Because you teach primarily anymore with models, figure and portrait in your workshops, although I know you do a lot of, or you used to do a lot of still life workshops. And I
I,
teach
I
primarily still life.
right. Although you're right, I most all of my workshops now, for the most part, are figure slash portrait, and sometimes a little bit of still life thrown in there. But I love painting still life.
Yes,
The model doesn't have to take a break.
that's right. I'm always reminding my students through the course of a workshop, okay, you've been painting for an hour. It's time to take a break.
Right.
Get your eyes off your own work. Very important. Periodically, take a visual break.
That's something I've had to
Um,
be vigilant about, because when you've got a model, it's a little bit more. There's a sort of built-in schedule. You have a certain number of minutes that the model's posing, then the bell goes off, and you take a break for 5 minutes, and then you're back. So it's um, a little more of a schedule. But with still life, it just goes on and on unless you take a break.
Yeah, and those of us who are trying to paint more loosely and trying to help other people paint more loosely, it's really an important part of that, I think, to get them to stop sooner than they ordinarily would if they were painting alone at that unlimited time, isn't it?
Yes, in fact, one of the an exercise that I've often talked about with students when they ask what they can do to start painting more loosely. I tell them that it's a good idea to, just as an exercise, use a small surface and use a timer and give yourself a limited amount of time to work on something. Kind of like what we're doing right here. We'll only work for about 45 minutes to 45 to 60 minutes on this. And then you
Mhm.
stop. But the idea is to not play around and thoughts or I can't think of the other word. Just noodle around.
Overwork.
Overwork, yes.
Yeah, I like to say that we all know how to overwork a painting and just suck all the life out of it, but how many of us know how to stop ourselves while the painting is still fresh and we've still got that energetic brushwork and all the stuff that we love that we intended to keep. And the other thing that I think that happens, which is really fascinating, is that when a part of a painting is fun or it's going really well, we want to like hang out and keep doing it. Yeah. And
Saying
so,
that, I'm
yeah,
not a
that's It's like the number one way that overworking happens is because like a part of
Yes.
the painting is going really well and then you don't stop. So my favorite advice is, put work all over the painting, bring it all up at once, put a little bit of stuff down, and then give it a chance to be done. Give it a chance to be done. And in my workshops, we do my exercise that I call twisted 20s, 20-minute paintings, 20-ish minute paintings. As I always tell the students, if you give me bonus time, I'll give you bonus time. So they usually end up being about 22 minutes a piece. But the
Mhm.
goal is just we mix paint beforehand, of course. We do quite a bit of color mixing time before the timer starts so that, and I've done some pre-mixing today before I've started this painting also. So that when the official 20 minutes actually starts, we're just putting paint on the canvas and we're just focusing on color and values and value relationships. And, the results are looser than anybody's ever done before. And then it's called twisted 20s because then what we do is we just twist or rotate the still life in between the 20-minute paintings and do two or three of them in a row, which can be, a way to use up all that paint you mixed. Doing multiple paintings of the same thing, but you get a whole new still life just by rotating it. And I'm sure still life setup is the hardest part of being a still life painter.
That that is true. The setup and the composition can be very challenging at times. I find that's the execution, of course, well, that's one thing, but the setting up
Hmm.
is half the battle.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about a workshop with still life instructors like you and I is that you'll get either a still life set up for you or you'll get a lot of help figuring out how to arrange. And what I'm really excited about France is going to like the local markets and finding little treasures to paint.
Mhm.
I think
Yes,
there's going to be a fair amount of that.
that sounds like it could be really fun. Against and of course, then there's the backdrop of being in France and being
Hmm.
surrounded by all of that.
Yep, and we'll do some outdoor still life, I imagine, and some outdoor model. Yeah, that's about as detailed as I need to get on an underpainting. And so for me, with an underpainting like this, I usually take a break and mix color once I've got the underpainting kind of established on the canvas, and then it has a chance to set up and settle in. It doesn't dry, but it kind of settles down. And so if I want to start painting on it right away, sometimes what I do is I'll hit it with a hair dryer for 10 or 15 seconds at this stage, and it just gets all. We'll just give it a little bit of this. And so I've been blocking in and doing my drawing. You probably just jump right into a pretty big brush. What size brush are you using right now?
Um, this one is a number 12 by Rosemary standards.
So maybe are they a little smaller than US numbers or a little bigger? I can never
I'm
remember.
not sure because in my other hand, I'm using an Italian-made brush, and that says it's a number 22, but the
Oh,
two brushes actually look like they're the same size. So
hmm.
I'm not sure how they come up with that.
Yeah, brush size is a mystery, isn't it? One of the great mysteries of painting.
Usually, when I'm talking about brushes or when I put them when I list them on a materials sheet, I just say bring a couple of brushes that are at least an inch wide or an inch and a half wide or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun. You'll have to let me try out some of your inch wide brushes while we're over there.
Absolutely.
Well, let's see. A 10 US is about as big as I ever go to paint with, even when I'm working on a larger, for me, canvas. The largest canvases I usually ever paint, and not in workshops, is like 18 inches on the side, is a pretty big, is what I consider a big painting. And for that, I would use an 8 or a 10. I paint with mostly flat.
And I have both flats and some filberts.
Well, I like, so I was just using a round brush for my block in. And that's really the only time I ever use a round brush is when I'm blocking in. And then I switch over to flats pretty quickly. I like Princeton Aspens. Those are my favorite brushes right now. Pretty
And I
affordable, synthetic.
Yeah, I've been using the rosemary ivory. That's their synthetic flat. Well,
Hmm.
they make flats and filberts.
And they're very similar to the Aspens. Yeah, maybe a little bit stiffer, but real similar.
I like the flats for big swaths of tone, kind of like that.
Oh, yeah. You make it look like fun.
It is,
Oh, yeah. Painting is fun.
especially when
So
it's
you teach,
what's
especially
that?
when it's what?
Oh, I said especially when it's going well.
You're right. Yeah. What was I painting recently where it was just giving me hell right up until, oh, some plaid. So I really like to incorporate cloth elements into my paintings by using cloth napkins. They're little.
Mhm.
Most of my still lifes are fairly small still lifes because many of my paintings are smallish scale. And so I like to use, like, cloth napkins just seem to be kind of a good size for
Right.
incorporating. And I have these, and so I'm always on the lookout and buying fun ones. And I have these new ones that are this blue plaid, blue and gray plaid. They're very pretty. And I was painting one the other day, and I just was, I don't know. One of my favorite sayings is the painting doesn't get to win. I win. I get to win. And we were at this point, and I was like, "Uh-oh, this painting is gonna win." But no, at the end, it turned around. You just It's so funny, isn't it? Like, you just have to stick it out through the awkward phase sometimes.
Yes,
You have
that can
this.
well, because it's at those moments that I you have to keep in mind that it's still a work in progress,
Mhm.
which is sometimes that's a bit unnerving, but as you said, in the end, it's important that the artist be the it's like we're in the driver's seat. Like we drive the painting or the car, whatever you want to call it, not the other way around.
Yes, and it's done when we say it's done. And we should probably say that it's done a lot sooner than we usually do. Find that if I think I'm done with the painting, I like to walk away from it, take a photo of it, maybe look at it outside the studio where I can't go in and mess with it. Important. And then kind of give it an overnight and see how it looks in the morning.
I don't know if you get this from students, but sometimes I've had students look at the demos that I've done and they'll say, "So, are you just going to leave that little part the way it is right there. And I
Does that make you
usually
paranoid?
um, that's a good
Um,
not in general, no, but it makes me aware of how differently I think I see things, and that I think sometimes students feel as though they need permission
mm,
to do certain things. And hearing the so-called professional say, "Well, yes, I like it that way," or this is maybe explaining why can be helpful.
yeah. What do I like about what's going on right now in this painting? Maybe there are some parts that are unresolved, but still can be called finished. Anything else being done to it? And those
Well, I think
unresolved parts.
the thing about painting this way is that I think for a lot of people assume, the more detail a painting has, the better it is. And I think there's a lot that some people don't really get about a very economical and painterly approach.
Yeah, because otherwise we could just take a photograph.
Well, that's right. And that to me would be
Sure, it's been your experience. I mean, it's hard enough to photograph our paintings. Let's not even talk about that. But I'm
right.
sure it's, students, your students come to you and what they're saying is, I want to loosen up my painting. I'm
Yes, they
struggling
do.
to loosen up my painting. I get that a lot too. And I think that
Right.
it's a great
Exactly.
goal.
They wouldn't be taking they probably wouldn't come to our workshops if they weren't interested in that.
Right.
If that
And so
makes
it does. And so the main way to help them do that, in my experience, has been just not giving people as much time as they've been accustomed to having to overwork things in the past. I didn't mix up anything for a beautiful knife handle here.
and that's why I like them to use large brushes. So it helps to keep them from really noodling and overworking.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's an interesting thing about demo paintings, isn't it? They just have a life of their own because you're in a kind of different thought space. When you're demoing, you're explaining your process, you're thinking and painting simultaneously. It's a little different than it sometimes is. And I'll often
It
stand
is
back from a demo and just go, wow, that happened. Cool.
it is different doing I find demo. I mean, as opposed to just working on a painting in my studio. It does seem like it's a different sort of a thing.
Yeah, and I try in my workshops not to demo for more than an hour at a time, maybe 45 minutes or an hour at a time. But I think that the best, like, this is what I like about painting videos. I think the best painting videos are the ones that just make me want to run to the easel and paint. So my goal is to kind of get them to that inspired place and then let them run off to the easel and paint. But some people really like watching long demos and some people don't. Every group is different. That knife, I'm going to clean that up with the negative space. Where I start putting paint on a painting is a question that I get asked a lot. A lot of students come and say, well, I had a teacher who said we always paint from background to foreground, or I always paint from light to dark. And I just don't have any kind of like methodology that I uh, give them like that. Like I don't know, rules of thumb or like strategies, always do it this way, always do this first. They're okay if you get into a pinch, I think, but I think each painting kind of knows where it wants to be started, and
I'm
I will, yeah.
I I do often hear students say, "Well, an instructor told me this once, and I thought you were supposed to do it this way." I More often than not, I tell students that I kind of approach things on a case by case basis, and as you said, in a pinch, it can be helpful to have some kind of a rule of thumb to fall back on. But I really like it. I think students should observe, and as I said, look at things on a case by case basis, and don't just put a cool color in or a warm color in just because there's a convention about doing something like that.
Yeah, the warm light, cool shadows, cool light, warm shadows is a good example of a rule of thumb that can help you out when
Yes,
you get into trouble, but it's not a good starting point mentally for making decisions. I like to
agree.
start with what I think Kevin McPherson calls an easy win. I just love that book of his, Fill Your Oil Paintings with Light and Color. And, that's a landscape painting book, but it's got plenty of good stuff for people who paint in all genres. And his easy win is, a color you think you get, you think you mixed right, in my case, because I do incorporate a lot of pre-mixing into my practice. And that tends for me to be a lighter and more saturated color. So, like, I began paint application in this one on the persimmons themselves because that bright, brilliant orange is pretty easy to mix. There aren't going to be that many ingredients in there. It's saturated. There's not a lot of guesswork. It's not neutral. It's probably just red and yellow, and then work down from there toward the darks, toward the neutrals. Because every decision influences the next one. So if you start, what's the quote? Have you heard this quote? Painting is an initial mistake followed by a series of corrections.
I think I have heard that.
You probably said it at some point.
Maybe.
You've been teaching for a long time, haven't you? How long have you been
It's
teaching workshops?
actually workshops, maybe 12, 13 years when I started teaching.
I've been teaching workshops for about 10 years, amazingly. Have you ever taught in an art school?
I haven't.
Me either.
Yeah, I did very little teaching up until about I'm going to say about maybe 2012-ish, 2013.
Mhm. What were
I
you so you were just doing studio painting and
I was
galleries
just doing
and
studio paintings and showing in galleries, and yeah, that's what I was doing. Then the financial crash happened, and that's when I started thinking about other things. And it was actually Robert Lemler who kind of helped open me up to doing
really?
workshops.
That's so funny because he really isn't doing much of that anymore.
I guess not.
I love Robert Lemler. I took a workshop from I'll never forget the first time I met Robert Lemler. I was at Scottsdale Artist School, just like getting a tour and trying to convince them to let me teach there. And he
Uh-huh.
was teaching one of his, which they did. I love it there. And he was teaching one of his just like weekly classes, and he was just hanging around the building. Scottsdale's kind of his stomping grounds. And the person that was giving me the tour was like, "Oh, Robert Lemler's class is on break. You want to meet him?" And I was like, "Oh, yes." So, and then I took a workshop from him in Salt Lake City at my spot in Salt Lake City. You teach for Lucia in Salt Lake City, don't you? Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I've taught at that, yes, the Salt Lake City workshops. Is that
Yes.
the name that she? Yeah.
Work
I thought
Workshops SLC is the name of it.
right. Yes. It's a good venue.
It is a good venue. I did know that you taught there. I did know that. And I took Lemler's workshop there a couple years ago, and it was great. It was a portrait figure, and I loved it. But I love his still lifes too. Okay, so he's the one who kind of guided you into the idea of teaching.
Yeah, because he at the time was married to the then director of education in Scottsdale. This is going back about 12, maybe 12 years ago. And I, I guess I kind of met Robert through social media, which was really starting to take off, like Facebook
Yeah.
and I really didn't even know much about how traveling workshops worked. And I was talking to him about it, and he said, "How about you could come down here and teach one?" And I said,
Mm.
"Oh, okay."
Yes, I could. That's kind of how I got into it also. I was painting, I was doing daily painting and selling my work through my blog, which, back remember when blogs were a thing, pre Instagram, and showing my work on Facebook. And because of just putting my work out there on Facebook and people and having shows, well, it first started with having shows locally here in Eugene, just little local stuff. And people around here started asking me, "Well, do you teach?" And I'd say, "Well, no, like, why do you ask?" And after a while, I started to get the impression that I should probably check out this teaching thing. And I did. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do this to see if I like it. And you probably can relate to what happened. I found out that I really enjoyed it.
I do
It's so
like it.
wonderful well, you must because you do a lot of it. I'm sure you like it. And the same with me. I love it. I love seeing that light come on. I love explaining my process, sharing the joy of painting.
And
And I think you and I both get a lot of students who like painted a long time ago, but then had like busy lives and families and careers and got away from it.
I hear a lot of that.
And helping those people get back into painting is like my life's work. So rewarding for me because I went through a long period after art school where I didn't know how to be an artist. I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself.
Yes, they don't teach you that.
They don't teach you what to do with yourself. They're like, here's your diploma and go have
You can
fun.
make money now. Here, good luck.
Mhm. And so I get that. It's like people who haven't been painting for whatever reason but they want to and that desire never leaves them and I just
I think it's great.
like being with those people.
I always encourage people, who whenever I hear that people started painting a few years ago or whatever, I just think it's of all the things you could be doing, I think it's great.
Yeah, it's totally wonderful. And I love having beginners in my workshops. I bet you do too.
I'm
I
perfectly
will
fine with dinners.
Oh yeah, I routinely have people who've never opened a tube of oil paint before.
Really?
Yes, I do. And some of them are acrylic painters because I allow it. I allow acrylic painters to come to my workshop. You and I are both oil painters and we both teach in oils. My technique is actually not that well suited to acrylics because I like to do all this pre-mixing and open acrylics have been a great thing. They stay wet longer and they let acrylic painters have a lot more flexibility with their palette usage. But I love having early painters in my workshops because, the gods of beginner's luck are smiling on us then. And, you know, beginning oil painters, they don't know what to be afraid of. They don't have any bad programming to overcome, and most of them don't know how much paint costs yet.
Right.
So They just throw everything at the wall. It's beautiful. What happens, what I've been seeing happening as I've been opening up my workshops to more acrylic painters in the last few years is, well, especially because I often get to bring really great samples from M. Graham to my workshop. So there's like free oil paint lying around, and these acrylic people who come in with acrylics, they leave being oil painters. They give it a try because it looks like so much fun. I like to joke with them that, if I convert one, I get a toaster. Oil Painters of America sends me a toaster. Beginners, yeah, the more experienced painters often end up being kind of definitely impressed, but also maybe a little jealous of what those quote unquote beginners do in the weekend of a workshop. And I don't teach a ton of long workshops. Like our workshop in France is
That
9 days
right, that's kinda long. I've never really taught
with,
one single
yeah,
workshop like that.
no, me either. 5 days is the most I've ever taught, but
Although
it's probably gonna.
it's not just 9 nonstop days. We'll have
Yeah, I don't
some
think we'd survive it.
no, there'll be some downtime, thankfully.
And field trips and fun stuff to break it up, adventures to keep inspired. I'm spending too much time on this silly little picture. I need to move on. See, that's the thing. You got to kind of mentally kick your own butt and say, okay, Sarah, move around the canvas a little bit. Go put paint where there's no paint. That's what I would say to my students, and that's how I talk to myself in my head when I'm painting. But yeah, so it's 9 days together as a group in France, but we're going to have these excursions and field trips. So it'll probably end up being about the equivalent of 5 days of studio time, which is totally wonderful. We're going to make so many paintings, figure paintings, still life paintings, oh, the odd landscape painting, and they will be odd. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna create a lot of art. You're gonna be done with your painting pretty soon, and I will be just getting started. But I can't, one of the things I'm really excited about this workshop is getting to demo alongside you. Um, I'm sure we're planning to
That
do individual demos.
that will be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, we're going to do individual demos, but then we'll give the students a chance. I think we should give the students a chance to watch us both demo like from the same model at the same time so they can really kind of compare and contrast our two techniques, which are similar but different enough that there'll be something to compare and contrast there, and kind of watch us both go to it at the same time. Dark accents, highlights of the shadow family. What was the last workshop that you taught, or you had? I'm assuming you've taught your last workshop of the year.
I have actually, that was with Cara Bullock
Oh
in
yeah,
that was it for 2023.
that's so funny. That's my first workshop of 2024. I'll be down there with her February 2nd, 3rd, 4th. My last workshop of the year was at Sedona Arts Center. That was last weekend. or 2
Oh,
weeks
right.
ago. Noticing? Not go wrong with Sedona. Beautiful place to be.
It's incredibly beautiful.
Mhm. Well, it looks like this place in France is incredibly beautiful. I was just looking at the Workshops in France website, which we're going to link to below this video this morning, and they have pictures of the Moulin in,
I saw
what did I
those.
say? They have all kinds of pictures of where the workshop is going to be, the lodging accommodations. There's like outdoor dining spaces and probably outdoor painting spaces for us
And
around this beautiful place.
yeah, it's a shame I don't drink because they're gonna have wine and champagne. Well, my wife is she'll be coming with me. She's the designated drinker, so
Oh, nice. Yeah,
she'll do drinking.
and there is some wine tasting um, involved
Yes.
too. Some wine tasting field trips that should be interesting. Maybe we could paint at the vineyard or the at the winery. There's a lot of wineries in Oregon where I live. They're a lot of fun to paint at. This, yeah. You were saying that you have not taught in France before, but you teach in
Mm,
Europe a lot.
I've been teaching in Europe, but not I haven't done any workshops in France. This will be the first French workshop. Taught in Italy, England.
I was invited to some places and then kind of COVID blew that up for me in 2020. It was sad. But
Yeah,
this,
you're not
I
yes,
have,
blew up a
yeah, I
lot of
have
things.
a workshop. A lot of happened to a lot of us. And I was so worried that like the in-person workshop was not going to come back, but it has come back. People really do want to be doing this, and
Yes.
I can totally see why. It's such a great, painting with other, not just us, but like the other artists in the group. You learn so much from your fellow painters.
Yes, I sometimes say at workshops it takes a village to do paint a painting.
Yeah, I like that.
There there's a really nice I find no matter where I go, I remember someone asked me this if I found that, you know, traveling around, like, what were the differences or were there big differences in the way that people, artists paint or something like that? And I said, I think there's a common language, which is really nice to see. And I like that. That's one of the things I like about being around other artists is that common language.
Hmm. I know I said I don't like to paint from dark to light or light to dark, but I do have one thing that I like to do pretty consistently, which is paint cast shadows before I paint the lights around them. I like to get my cast shadows established before I go in and paint the lights. It just seems easier for me to paint the light around the dark and get those soft edges that I want.
The cast shadows really help solidify things and define where things are going. It I think it's important to have those in there.
Hmm. What kind of spotlight do you use on your work? It looks like you've
Uh,
got maybe like an LED panel light
maybe if
lighting
I
up your still life?
yeah, let me see if I can't turn this. You can see it's on a, um yeah, it's an LED,
Mhm.
it's the box with the baffles on it, and you can change the color temperature of it, and I've got it
You
on a
do that
boom.
much?
Do I change the color? Is that
Mhm.
um, not not routinely. No, I think I found a sweet spot, and I usually leave it there.
Yeah, I tend to like warm light
I Yeah, I
on
guess
my
that
still life.
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, to light the still life.
so literally, I can tell you that my this light is set at 4,900 Kelvin, if that
Ooh,
means anything.
cool. That's a cool one.
Somewhat. It can go even cooler, but it's a little on the cooler side, I'd say. Yeah, it is somewhat cooler than it's not perfectly neutral, it's slightly cooler.
Well, my light that's on my still life right now is just a light bulb in a clip lamp. I light my room, I light my studio with those lights kind of bounced off the ceiling, those LED panel lights. I love them.
Uh-huh.
But I've got a light bulb shining on my still life that's probably 2700K, so it couldn't be more opposite.
Right. I used to paint with a lot of well, now you can't it's I mean, no one's really using incandescent lights now, but,
Mm, mhm.
um, yeah, back in the day, used a lot of warm lights like that. I think I kind of like the slightly cooler something that's slightly closer to daylight.
Maybe I'll get there someday.
The nice thing is that we've got choices and
Yeah,
all these
I used to love the halogen incandescent bulb for sure,
uh,
and you're right, those are not easy to find anymore.
no, in fact, I think they're not, yeah, they're not being manufactured for
Mhm.
average, like, residential use.
I found one a few years ago at this like weird discount store, and I got ridiculously excited.
Did you buy them
So
out?
they are still. I did. Don't know if I have any left. I might. I think maybe this is one that I'm using. I'd have to look, but it's on and it's bright. Oh, my ground color is very saturated. That's the thing about pre-mixing. I often end up a lot more saturated. And then when you paint on this warm underpainting, your blues can look really, really vibrant when you first start applying them. Down a bit. Great. The great neutralizer. So as we're recording this, it's right at the end of the year, 2023, right about to be Christmas.
Yes, it
Did you get
is.
any Christmas commissions?
No, I don't really do commissions very much. I could count on one hand the number of commissions I've done over the years.
Yeah, I think I could count on two hands, probably. Yeah. But when I
It's
do
ni
get commissions, they're super cool.
it's nice when I've had them, assuming they're commissions I really wanna be doing,
Hmm.
which they aren't always.
No.
The commissions have never really been I've never really pursued them. I love painting whatever I like. I've always just wanted to paint whatever it is I want to paint,
Hmm.
which is a very self-indulgent way of thinking. But then again, I am an artist.
Absolutely. And if you're not inspired and you're not feeling it, the viewer, they probably won't either. So, how well will the commission come out anyway? Did I do any commissions this year? I got a commission to paint a pair of shoes. I haven't done it yet, but it's not a holiday deadline. So, well, I'm sure I'll feel like doing that at some point. And when I do,
A
I'll do it.
pair of shoes, that would be an interesting commission.
Yeah. And as a still life artist, when I get commissions, it's always like somebody's got an object that they want painted.
Right. That's interesting.
It is. It can be really interesting. What have I done? What have I gotten? What commissions have I gotten? Once I got someone gave me a bunch of quince from their quince tree, this weird fruit that looks like a rotten pear.
I don't know if
And
I've heard of quince, but I don't know if I've actually maybe I've seen them at the store, but I don't think they're as common on the East Coast.
yeah, they grow out here. I wouldn't think they'd be common on the East Coast, no. And they're not very good. Like you can't just sit down and eat them. You have to cook them. And
Hmm.
you can make this stuff called membrillo out of quince, which is a paste, like a Moroccan recipe, I think. Anyway, so this one commission, this was many years ago. These people gave me all this quince, and then they gave me this membrillo that they had made. Looks like a big old stick of jelly or something. It's weird. And I put all that in the still life, and I just said, "Oh, do you want to see, sketches?" And they said, "No, do whatever you want." Which gotta love that.
That's always nice to
And
hear.
yeah, and went and they gave me some plates and dishes. So I was kind of worried about taking care of those in my studio for the time that I had them, but it was great. And that was a memorable still life commission. I had to teach some. I got some exciting workshop plans coming up for the new year. I'm going to teach. I don't have any portrait workshops, so I'm super happy that you and I will be getting some models at our France workshop. I love painting models from life.
That should be that should be really cool. Like an outdoor model surrounded by whatever is around the countryside. I think that would be fun.
I think it's going to be fantastic. The scenery around this Moulin, where they're hosting the workshop, is really quite gorgeous. There's like a river running past and mountains nearby. It's just quite impressive. Mm. But what am I teaching this year that's interesting? So I have a video workshop where I focus on metal and glass in the still life. And prosaically enough, it's called metal and glass. And I've had that out with Kara Bullock through
Oh,
her
right.
video, yeah, through her video art school for a while, for like about a year now, I guess, metal and glass. But I'm going to teach metal and glass as an in-person workshop for the first time this year, which should be really fun. All still life, but talking about the specific, not, I don't want to say problems, but the specific issues that we run into with those textures.
And when I was at Kara's studio in November, we filmed a portrait demo, which I believe will be available, I'm going to say February.
Great. I'll look forward to that. I'll make sure she loads that up in my account. I'll get to watch it. And if you're interested in checking out any of my classes, David, or seeing what they're like, just ask Kara. She can load them into your account. One of the perks of teaching for her.
Oh, that's good to know. I think I'm getting into the home stretch here.
Mm. Okay, well, I will at least have a solid start, a solid first pass. I'm getting a little bogged down in the knife. Like I said at the beginning, I made my own bed by choosing to put this knife in here. And with man-made, sticking to organic shapes is really great. In still life, it's really freeing because, you're going to take it home, you take your painting home from a workshop, and no one's going to say, oh, that orange really didn't look like that. You did it wrong. But if you got a wonky bowl, everyone's going to know. But then again, hey,
Yeah,
it's not a pottery workshop. If you got a wonky bowl, right on.
no, that's one
Just
of the
have
nice things about still life. It's a lot more forgiving than figure or portrait.
mhm, taking some I love color, and getting to take some risks with color is also one of my favorite things about being a still life painter because, I'm all about accurate, well, not accurate color, but realistic color. I'm not a real big color inventor, but I do encourage risk taking with color because I think it's so fun. Because, that thing about you can paint in any color you want as long as you match the values. Real
Right.
thing.
Yes. Okay. I think I would be wise to quit while I'm ahead before I regret doing something else. Maybe what I could
Right.
do, move this so that I can get a better view of what the painting
Oh,
looks
that's
like.
quite beautiful, David.
Thank you.
To kind of explain how you set up that background wall behind your setup to sort of cast a shadow onto it. I really love that effect.
Yeah, I love using a shadow box or something. Oh, I don't know if you've ever used this stuff, but it's called cinefoil. It's basically
Uh-huh.
like this is great stuff. And
Mhm. I've seen it
I
in studios. It's that black, kind of hard,
yeah,
bendy stuff.
right. It's like think of black aluminum foil that you would use in the kitchen. Um, only it's black, right? And you can bend it and shape it and sort of do what you want with it to shape the light. And I love doing that. I love since I my background was started with looking at the old masters when I was still a high school student. I have a real love for classical traditional lighting. So I like a strong one directional light. And so, in other words, a strong contrast between light and shadow.
Mhm.
and using a backdrop, or in this case, it's just some black foam core. You could use any number of things. Helps to create some really strong contrast.
And what's that kind of colored green element that's back in there
Oh,
behind
right.
the flower?
Actually, that's literally just some paint, some acrylic paint on. There's just some different color on the foam core, and I just use that sometimes to make up some kind of a color. Like if I see the green and I think I want more green in it, I might just paint more green, and if I don't, then I'll just focus on some of the other color. So in other words, I'm making up some of that background um, as I see fit. Okay, well now that I'm finished, I can actually turn around and look and see what you're
What
up
I'm
to.
getting up to, I'm also fairly close to being finished. There's like you'd be finished with your first pass, and then you can sort of pause and take stock and say, well, how many bells and whistles do I feel the need to add to this? Did I forget to put on any highlights, dark
Mm,
accents? That's generally my thing. Well, I'll just like, because I don't lead, I try not to lead with my highlights. I really try to save the joy for the end. And also so I don't put on too many highlights
like the
because they're the
icing on the
other,
cake.
yep, they're the other thing that's really fun to do. So we kind of want to overdo sometimes.
Oh,
But
highlights are
highlights are fun.
it's the reason I became an artist.
Yeah. And I guess I must have picked this up in my training, but it's sort of like save the highlights for last because they're the most fun. Like
Hmm.
eat your vegetables first and then you
Then you can
can
have dessert.
uh the highlights. Get a little cloth texture here. And
I've only again like here on the East Coast, persimmons are you can get them, but they're not quite as common. But on a couple of occasions, I've gotten persimmons and I've used them in still life. And I've also like if you've got a good ripe one, they're really
mm,
delicious.
they are good. Now they grow on trees out here too, but I will full disclosure, I bought these at Costco.
Oh, okay.
Some
Oh,
years I get lucky and someone says, "Come over and pick," and I'm like, "Yay."
right.
But that did not happen this year, so I had to go to Costco, but they look pretty good and they last forever, and so it tends to be this, like, yearly theme with me where I paint persimmons every year around this time. So I have some parts of this painting that I feel like are overworked that I wish I had done a little less with, but on the whole, I'm about ready for highlights. Ugh, my napkin, my rag is just terrible. Do you wear gloves when you paint? I didn't
I
notice.
don't. I just
I don't
y-
either.
I
Or bad.
yeah, well, it's 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 that's something a habit I got into many years ago. I think when I was learning to paint, I'm going to say, I mean, I went to school in the 1980s. I don't really remember gloves so much then, but
Hmm. I was in the
maybe,
90s and I don't remember gloves then either. And I don't remember us having Gamsol or anything like that either in the
oh
90s. It
right,
was
right. I remember
odorless
just using
mineral
turpentine.
spirits.
Well, at the beginning, I remember using turpentine, and then at some point, mineral spirits became available, thankfully, because turpentine is nasty stuff, in my opinion. Um,
Hmm.
I haven't used turpentine in decades, like
Mm-mm.
real turpentine.
What's your least favorite art supply
My least
that you
favorite.
your least favorite that you encounter? So like I don't know, it doesn't have to be super obscure, but is there something that you run into on a regular basis that you just are like, "Arr."
Hmm. I don't know if I thought of it as being my least favorite.
You wouldn't use it, but your
I
students might be bringing it to workshops?
um, well, that's a good question. I can't think of any. No, I can't really think of anything I would have the students bring that I detest. I don't think I
You
don't think
you
I
would try to stop them from bringing it.
right. Um,
I got one.
you do? Okay.
One. I do. Liquin.
Oh, well, okay, so I don't use Liquid myself.
Mm-mm.
Yes, I'll agree with you. I used to use Liquid in the 90s. I I tend not to like it mostly for its smell. I think it has a really
Oh, yeah,
nasty
the
smell.
smell is it's terrible. Yeah, that's what I don't
Yeah,
like about it, but also the weird,
I
like, jelly-like quality.
mhm. Um, I was using Liquid in the 90s before switching to Gamblin products like Galkid.
Okay.
Um, and now the odorless, no, solvent-free Galkid version is has even less smell than the regular Galkid. So I've been enjoying using that.
I love that stuff. Yeah, Liquin I really don't like, and I'm not yeah, I'm not a huge fan of water mixable oils. I mean, they're not the devil.
Oh,
What I really think I don't like anymore, and I used it when I was in art school, is Winton paint.
oh, right, that's the student grade stuff.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
but I
water
mean,
mix.
Winton.
Yeah, it's kind of cheap stuff. The water mixable oils, I also do not like those. But again, I these are not things that I would be using or asking students to bring. However, having said that, I have had students bring them to class. I mean, if I generally don't
Hmm.
tell students not to bring acrylic or water mixable oils. If that's what they are comfortable with,
Hmm.
then you know, go ahead and bring them. Um, I full disclosure, I am very partial to oil paint. I really,
Me too.
I do, I do like it. Um, I consider it actually. You were saying earlier about getting, if you convert someone, you get what was it you said?
A toaster.
Right, right. I
You're
get a
gonna
toaster
help
oven
me be
actually. If I convert someone to oil paint, I get a toaster oven.
lucky. Well, maybe that'll be like when
No,
I
I get a
reach
waffle
signature
maker.
status.
I was teaching a workshop in Alabama a couple of months ago where there was a lady who had acrylic paint, and I was just talking about oil paint and the differences, and I think it kind of piqued her interest. And by the end of the workshop, she was saying that she wanted to try them, and I thought, I think that's a good idea because if nothing else, it's a good idea to try different things, and then you can at least you'll be able to make a more informed decision about whether or not um, you want to continue using whatever the material is. But at least then you can say you've tried it. Um,
Hmm. And
unlike
often
when
it's fear and misconceptions that are stopping people from trying it.
right, right, or I don't know
It
if you've ever
smells bad, it's
oh
dangerous, those things. Not that
right.
that's what that lady was saying, but that's what I hear sometimes.
Well, I think yeah, those are probably some of the preconceptions that people have about oil paint, which are not really accurate. There are a couple of colors which if you were I mean, like the cadmiums, you don't okay. you don't want to eat them. You don't want to ingest them. That could be a problem. Um, the smell itself, I've never really thought of oil paint as being. I mean, it's basically just pigment suspended in an oil vehicle. It's. I mean, it's just linseed oil. I don't, and unless you're breathing in certain kinds of pigments, like really caustic, poisonous pigments, I don't think that they're particularly harmful. And now with all of the different kinds of medium that you can get, there's a lot of safe um, alternatives. Actually, in my workshops, we don't use an alkyd medium. Normally, we would just use an oil like linseed oil.
Mhm,
Just keep it very simple.
mhm. And you
And
could fly with that.
you could, yes, you could. I don't generally bring solvents with me. I usually get them wherever it is that I'm teaching. Uh, yeah, I've never actually tried to fly with linseed oil.
I've
I
flown
don't.
with walnut oil, always checked in my checked luggage, but
Right.
straight walnut
Okay.
oil I take it with me all the time, but not solvent, not Gamsol.
Mhm. Fortunately, those things are readily available wherever I'm teaching. Because the students already, or the venue, or the studio generally has an ample supply of solvent or oil or something like that. Paints, those I bring with me
Mhm.
and pack them in, put the little note on them that says what exactly they are.
And that's not carry-on, that's checked.
That's just checked, right?
Checked, yeah.
So if you were to take this workshop and come to France, and if you're traveling from outside of Europe, um,
Mhm.
you would check your paints and include some. You can find these things on the internet if you search, you know, a statement
Yes.
that tells you what the what the paints are and explains it to the security people who go through your luggage.
Yeah, and I
Um,
bet anybody that wanted to email you or we could send them what we use.
right,
Yeah.
right. Like Gamblin, I think has a statement on their website. Um, I've never had a problem, and I've been teaching in Europe for a good 4 or 5 years now, and I haven't had any issues with that, which is
Mhm. No,
good for
I've
some
never had
people.
issues with paint. And workshops in France, you can also, I believe you can ship your supplies ahead of time,
Hmm.
even like just place a Blick order and have, or an order from your online art supplier and have that shipped is my guess. You didn't want to carry
Probably,
your supplies with
yeah,
you.
probably.
Huh.
Uh,
All right. Well, I'm just about done now too. Look at me.
okay,
You see any glaring issues that I might be having here?
looks good from here.
Oh, well, I'll take it, David. Thank you.
Although I have been seeing a bit of the back of or the side of your head.
Oh, that's a bummer. I'm sorry about that,
Yeah, that's
folks.
okay.
When
I
I paint
probably
over
should have
here,
mentioned
like
that earlier.
I've been painting this part of the painting, and when I paint over
Oh,
there, I tend to
right.
want to move my head. But oh yeah, all right. So when I was filming with Kara down in California for my Kara Bullock Art School videos, like Metal and Glass, the Chad, her cameraman, he actually had a stick, and he would poke me with the it was like a
Oh,
broom
okay.
handle. He would poke me when I would get in front of the thing. It
That's
would
funny.
help. Yeah. All right. Well, yours
Yes,
came
I
out
think
awesome.
thanks. I hope I didn't get in the way too much.
I guess.
At this point, I've filmed myself doing a number of these that I try to be aware of that.
Mhm.
The it can be a problem unless you're wearing a GoPro on your forehead or something like that. It can be a little tricky to film the process of a painting.
Definitely. What about signing? How do you sign your paintings?
Oh,
Did you
oh,
sign that one
right.
already?
No, I didn't, but now I do it in a couple of different ways. Now, if it's a wet into wet painting like this, and I'll do it, I can just scratch my signature. So maybe what I should do is move that in,
Yeah, I wanna watch this.
and then I would just, and since it's on a dark ground anyway, this is perfect because some light over a dark gray, and I can just, let's see, I'll just scratch it in like that.
Love it.
You
Uh-huh.
can't see it.
Oh,
It's there, but you can't see it very well, but it is there.
so I'm gonna put mine on now. Let me move my camera in too. Where am I gonna sign? I'm gonna sign in the lower left, I think. I know I'm out of focus here. I'm gonna sign in the lower left. I usually sign in the lower right, but I've got a lot going on in the lower right of the painting today. And I use this little tiny liner brush, also Princeton brand, but that's inconsequential. Any brand of liner or rigger will do. And I'm gonna swish around with some Gamsol and grab some paint and use that nice teal color from the picture. I love painting Fiesta wear. And then just real carefully.
I've also used I think they're called oil markers.
Huh?
Sometimes I once a painting is dry, I've signed it with one of those markers. I I have to admit, and then sometimes I do sign it with a brush, which I'm terrible at signing with a brush. I end up it usually takes me about 10 tries to get a signature that I like.
Mm. And that's a real bummer when you have to keep like rubbing it out and then doing it again.
Mhm. Yeah.
I've been there. All right, awesome. Well, we will both get these photographed and we'll throw them up on Instagram. And is yours going to be for sale?
Yeah, sure. Always.
Always, yeah. And how much would you be selling a painting like that for? What size is it?
Oh, um, well, it's just a piece of unstretched canvas taped to a board. I'd say this is about 10 by 10 inches, roughly.
Hmm.
Yeah, if I were gonna sell it, I'd probably ask about 400 for it.
That sounds very, very reasonable. Mine is 8 by 8 on a canvas panel, and it will be 350. So cool. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing that posted. And David, any last words for our viewers,
Um,
students, potential co-partiers in France?
Other than saying that I think this would be a really good experience, um, working with two instructors and getting two different approaches over the period of 9 days. Um, yeah, I mean, I would encourage people who are even mildly interested in doing it. Of course, I'm biased, but
In a good way. Yes, we're going to make a lot of paintings. I'm super looking forward to it. And I'm really looking forward to teaching with you and getting to know you better and meeting your wife and meeting all the students that are going to join us in Languedoc. So
yeah.
check
And
out the
again,
link
the
below.
dates, right? And the dates are early October of 2024, and that's workshopsinfrance.com.
Shopsinfrance.com. Thanks, David. See you soon.
All right, take care, Sarah.